Hello and welcome to this training video on continuous improvement and validation, which is part of our series on the Corporate Net Zero Standard version 2 public consultation. My name is Eoin White and I'm a research lead at the SBTi. In this video, I'll be walking you through the key updates in our approach to continuous improvement and validation. Please note that this overview isn't exhaustive and many of the details will be further explored during our public consultation. If you have any feedback, please use the consultation channels available on our website. Under the current validation model, there is a lack of clarity in the target renewal process and how historical company performance against targets will be considered when the company is establishing their new targets. The revised standard is introducing end-to-end validation model that guides companies through their initial target and renewal target setting, providing options for addressing under-delivery and rewarding over-delivery against previous targets. Our validation model still contains the same three high-level steps: preparation, target development, and implementation. However, a renewal validation loop has been added, which is triggered at the end of a target timeframe or when a rebaselining occurs. There are key updates which occur within each of these steps. The first step on preparation contains a number of elements. The first being that the entry check to confirm that there is leadership support within the company to set and make progress against SBTi targets. It also contains an updated base year selection process. If a company is going through their initial validation, the base year can be no more than 3 years before the validation to ensure the most recent base years are used. If a company has a previously validated target, they may use the previous target cycle base year, provided the base year emissions are still valid and representative of the company, or they may use the previous cycle target year. The second step on target development contains the following elements: third-party assurance of the greenhouse gas inventory to improve data quality. The company must also report its transition plan, which is approved by the highest level of governance within the company. The SBTi is consulting on whether this should be a mandatory requirement or a best practice recommendation. It includes also a renewal of the Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 targets to remain validated. Any potential underperformance from the previous target cycles are addressed in the Scope 1 target setting renewal phase to better conserve the carbon budget and increase target confidence in target efficacy. The SBTi will be consulting on a number of options for addressing underperformance, which will be introduced a little bit later in this video. Underperformance, though, is not explicitly addressed for Scope 2 and Scope 3, with companies being expected to simply reset targets using the same methods as the previous cycle. The third step on implementation, then, companies assess progress against all of their targets at the end of the target timeframe, and companies must provide third-party assurance to substantiate progress against those targets. The SBTi will also be consulting on how this requirement may differ based on different types of company categorization to ensure that this requirement is still feasible. When it comes to the target renewal and performance correction process, there are two key steps. The first step is to assess progress against targets, which contains a number of elements. Firstly, being to confirm the base year emissions are still valid and to initiate a rebaselining if the base year emissions change by greater than 5% due to, for example, a restructuring. Next, then, is to calculate the target achievement over the previous target cycle. And finally, to substantiate data used in this calculation with third-party assurance. The second step is to set a renewal target and correct for any underperformance. The standard introduces 3 additional options to address this underperformance, with the final option being selected through the consultation process. Option 1 is to set a linear contraction target, which is the same as the linear contraction approach that was introduced in our Scope 1 video. The option does not specifically account for past performance, but does give companies a steeper emissions reduction path if they underperform in the previous cycle. The second option then is to set a linear contraction target and also to purchase high durability removals in the new target cycle equal to the cumulative emissions underperformance in the previous cycle. Strict guardrails for this approach are being consulted upon and are needed to ensure that the removals option is not misapplied. However, the options being proposed is that the removals are permanent, providing a clear cost incentive for companies to mitigate rather than to buy removals. The third option then is our budget conserving contraction target, which is the same as the budget conserving contraction approach that was also discussed in our Scope 1 video. There are different benefits and drawbacks to each of these specific options. For the first option, the linear renewal path between the previous target year emissions and the allocated net zero year residual emissions, it contains a number of benefits. The first being that the companies always have a path to net zero by 2050. But one of the main drawbacks of this approach is it does not specifically correct for carbon budget overconsumption during that previous target cycle. The second option then uses the same pathway established in option 1, but the cumulative underperformance from the previous target cycle is addressed via an equivalent volume of high durability removals being purchased during the next target cycle. The benefit of this approach is that companies not only have a clear path to net zero by 2050, but they also then ensure budget underperformance is corrected. The key drawback here being that clear and strict guardrails are needed to prevent any misapplication in case of significant underperformance. The third option is where the net zero year is shifted forward to ensure that any cumulative budget underperformance is fully corrected through increased ambition. The benefit here is that it ensures carbon budget is fully conserved without the use of additional removals. But the main drawback is that it may render, in some cases, the emission reduction pathway being infeasible for companies with substantial underperformance, for example, which may occur due to fast growth rates. It is important to note that these options do not allow companies to claim target achievement and that companies are still required to abate emissions to a residual level in line with 1.5 degree pathways. The SBTi is also consulting on what level of underperformance is still eligible for companies to rectify their shortcomings and to maintain their SBTi validation. Thank you for joining me today. Please refer to the draft standard and our website for more information on our continuous improvement and validation revisions. I'd encourage you to fill out our video feedback form to help shape future communications about the corporate net zero standard revision process. Please also fill out our public consultation survey to provide your feedback on the draft standard. Both links can be found on our website and in the description of this video.